Okay, I will, after I mess with this thing here, I'll call this meeting to order. All right, welcome everyone to our Williamsport City Council meeting. It's Thursday, June 8th, 2023. We're in Train Transit 2. Please rise for the invocation by Councilman Allison. I would quickly, though, before the invocation, like to just take a moment of silence for Bill Nichols Sr. He just passed away, and for us specifically, he was the first council president under the current form of government that we're acting under. And going through that process, I'm very confident was pretty arduous. And he did a lot of work to, I think, really set up structure as to how we work, a lot of intelligent work. And so I thank him for that. So just like to have a moment of silence for him to recognize his efforts for the city. And then I'll turn it over to Councilman Allison. Floor is yours, Mr. Allison. Thank you.
Thank you, President Yoder. I wanted to add a couple things about Bill as well, and then have a little time of prayer for his family.
Absolutely.
He did so many things in this community. And you can recount, they're all recounted in the newspaper and everybody that knew him. He touched so many levels in this community, the legal system, the library, you can go on and on, the business area. He touched so many, but a couple that I personally have interacted with and thought about were his founding of STEP Incorporated and his founding of the Williamsport Symphony. And as I thought about that, I thought, those to me are close to my heart, because they touch people, people that had needs, physical and others, and people that were able to enjoy the arts and the things that the symphony brought to our community, which it just touched the whole spectrum of humanity. And there are things that have built us up as a community that don't often get all the attention, but it's really a foundation that we as a people take or have advantage of and have been blessed by. So I'm so grateful for what he's done in that area, as well as so many others. So let's have a moment of prayer. Heavenly Father, we do thank you tonight for the gift that Bill Nichols Sr. was to this area, Lord God, and how he gave of himself to help others and lift them up, Lord, and enrich them, Lord God, and cause us to consider those things in our lives and encourage the better angel in each one of us, that we might be a blessing to others. And because of that, Lord, we pray for his family as well tonight. We pray for your hand of strength and comfort for all of this family, Lord, as they process through this time. It's never an easy time, but one that they can hold dear to their hearts because of all he meant to them and to all of us in the city and this region. And we thank you tonight, Father, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Item 3, approval of city council meeting minutes from May 28th, 2023. Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second. Motion and a second. Any comments or questions related to the meeting minutes? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Biter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Okay.
Okay. Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. For the record, we do have a quorum still. Item 4, limited courtesy of floor. We've had no requests tonight. We will move to item 5, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution to reject all bids for the Brandon Park Band Shell Rehabilitation Project.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second. Motion and a second. I will turn it over to Mr. Sander. Good evening, sir. Uh-oh. It happens. I feel your pain. Good evening, John.
Good evening, everybody. It's just not working out for me. So what you have before you is a resolution to reject the bids for the Brandon Park Band Shell Rehab Project. We had 2 bidders on the project. They were Lundy Construction in the amount of $567,900 and M&R Contracting for $615,086. In addition to the low bid, which would have been Lundy, for $567,900. We also have a construction inspection contract from designer, Gannett Fleming, in the amount of $21,000. If you add that plus the $567, ends up being just about $600,000. We currently only have approximately $400,000 funded for the project, so it's $200,000 shortfall for the project. So, with that being said, we discussed it internally within the administration. It was determined to reject the bids at this time and to look for other funding in the future. So.
Thank you, Mr. Sander. This was reviewed in our merged Public Works Finance meeting, Mrs. Katz.
Yes, John, since you want to reject the bids, it cost us money to rebid for this. On number 2, this means that if we bid it out again, say we do that, then we won't get into the process of doing anything with the band shell until next year.
That's correct. So
And so this band shell is going to be closed all summer then.
that's potentially correct. So the first item, the rebidding, will cost us nothing. So Gannett Fleming delivers a fantastic bid package of plans and specifications. They are able to give it to me, and I actually bid it out for the city for ourselves on pen bid myself with very little, zero actually, influencer help from Gannett, other than 1 or 2 questions that came up during bidding. So that will actually cost us nothing. We were looking at additional funding. I know Skip Mimi was looking at potentially getting some more CDBG funding for the project. Currently, the $400,000 is comprised of 270 in CDBG, 109 from the FCFP Foundation, and roughly 20 grand from the county. So Skip was looking to supplement his pot for the next go around, but it's going to take him a little bit of time, I believe. So,
Well, the problem with this is we know supplies are getting to be more expensive as the days go on. So this might be outbidded again, which is kind of scary. And we want to make sure this band shell is fixed because you don't want it to fall apart any more than it is at this point. It's going to cost us more money all the way around. The mayor's not here. Nobody from the administration really is here tonight to discuss what are we doing with ARPA? Is there any funds left, say in the rec department? Because this is in the park.
Yeah.
We don't know because we keep on asking for a spreadsheet and we still don't get that information. We don't know what's left and what has been spent. So, and these are the things, we need to answer. I mean, you're asking us to reject this bid. Do you think maybe it's premature if we can get other money to finance this?
I've asked, we don't have, to my understanding, we don't have additional ARPA funding available in recreation at the moment. That's been told to me. So.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So, I mean, realistically thinking about this, outside of rescue plan funding, there really isn't anything else
No.
locally. So I understand that perspective. I think, Mrs. Katz, what you're kind of speaking to is this might be a really opportune time to kind of look at what we have budgeted. We've got a pretty good plan in place now, but our particular projects not getting off the ground to the point where we may need to look at reallocating that money before we run up against the wall on the time frame.
Mhm.
John, if we would table this for 2 weeks, is that going to negatively impact these bids, the process as far as what you need to do moving forward is aside from just delaying it 2 weeks?
No, it wouldn't
Okay.
do anything. I mean, I might get calls from the bidders.
Yeah.
Hey, we are bonded for X amount of dollars. But other
Sure.
than that, it can't go too long because then they start really bonding companies only, have
Yeah,
unbonded
understood.
companies so long.
Understood. I don't know what others think. I mean, maybe it's worth holding off for 2 weeks, and that 2 weeks, perhaps we can start to look at where are we at with rescue plan funding? If we can quickly see, hey, we might be able to pull here, rather than rejecting bids, maybe it's not rejecting and awarding a bid. So what do other
Yeah.
members think?
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. This is a project that's been going on
Yeah.
for at least 2 years now.
Yeah.
Between the engineering work, John, you and I took a trip there
Yep.
last spring.
Mhm.
It's much needed work that has to be done. So I would really feel more comfortable if we just
Yeah.
all take a couple more days to be very sure about that.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah,
Um,
and I would agree with that too, Adam. I think that, sorry about the background noise. I think that our best move is to try to find the money before we reject the bids, try a little harder because we know that this work needs to be done. It can't be skipped. And the longer we wait, the more expensive it gets, whether that's due to inflation or due to the further deterioration of the band shell. So waiting is only going to increase the cost.
Skip, from your perspective, does that help you at all with seeing what on your end might be able to be accommodated as well? Or it's okay to say not really, but I don't know if that's enough time. Okay. 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 We just don't know how much.
Probably enough to make the project fly.
Okay.
With the numbers you can do tonight. But I need time to be able to do that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you,
And
Skip.
I
Yes.
would like to see that this would go through this year with it going, because we've canceled a lot of this, we've canceled the summer things in the park.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of people are upset about that. And since we can't use the bandstand, you're going to lose 2 years if we put this off for next year. And we don't want to do that.
Okay.
Hey, Bonnie, can I interject though? Adam?
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, Randy did have an excellent idea on Tuesday. And as far as I've heard, there's nothing against it. That we should potentially consider using the new facilities at Ways Garden for summer programming this summer and next. Or this summer and until the project is finished.
That's right. I forgot about that, Randy, that you did bring that up.
Yeah, we talked to Sean about it on Tuesday. It just people are really bummed about the lack of summer programming in Brandon Park, and it would be a good way to get some new sets of eyes on Ways Garden too. People who may not have been down there for a while,
Liz, Sean isn't here tonight either, so.
We can circle back and send that over to him. If he was there on Tuesday, I'm sure he's got it too. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you, Liz. I guess, is there a motion to table?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second to table. Any further comments or questions on the motion to table? Hearing to see none, Mrs. Frank on the motion to table, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yeah, yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to table passes 5-0. John, thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
Through the process, but for this as well.
No problem. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is anybody here from Aaron's Water Ice or online?
No, Aaron's not going to be
Okay.
here because he's at graduation.
All right,
Sean was supposed to be here tonight.
that's okay.
Can I talk about this for a little bit?
We don't have anything to talk about. We haven't motioned for another item.
Well, let's make
What?
a motion on this because I do want to.
Well, we have two people from Keller and Delta. I'd like to do them first.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll jump back to
Okay.
item 6. So let's jump to item 7, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing third renewal of a consultant agreement between the city and Keller Partners and Company.
Is there a motion and a second?
So
Second.
Motion and a second. The mayor was not able to make it tonight. So I'll just roughly kick this off here. So this is renewing our agreement with Keller Partners. They're one of our lobbyists that we work with for grants, et cetera. Keller Partners really represents us in Washington at the federal level. And so I know this was discussed, or this wasn't discussed on Tuesday. I do know that Keller and his team are here remotely, and I know they have a little bit of an update as to what they've been working on as well. That was forwarded to us via email earlier this evening from the mayor. Keller and team, I'm happy to turn it over to you to talk about the contract and also just what you've been working on lately, and then we can certainly get into some discussion about it if we need to.
Thank
So
you, President Yoder. Thank you, council members. And my name is Tom Keller. I am with Keller Partners and Company. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Andy Garfinkel, who is on travel and actually coming to us from Florida. So I'm in the Washington, D.C. conference, our office conference room, and I've had a long day on Capitol Hill, but it's good to see you all, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to give the council an update on where things stand. And I think we have some continued good news. I also want to thank the mayor and John Sander, because we have worked very closely with both of them as we have approached the different funding opportunities that Washington has to offer. And if it's okay with the council, I would just like to run through a couple of the updates, which of course you have our report in front of you. So if that works, let me just run through. We were there in April 2022 giving an in-person update. And if you recall, at that time, we weren't sure where things stood on the congressionally directed spending, otherwise known as earmarks. And we were very pleased about the results. But let me get to this year first, and then we'll circle back to last year. Right now, the city has pending $3.5 million officially requested by Congressman Muser and Senator Fetterman, both the House and the Senate, so it's a bicameral request. And this is for work on the levee. That's $3.5 million. And, you know, we're in the very beginning stages of this earmark request. And what happens is you have to get on a member of Congress's priority list, which takes a lot of work to do that. There's an application process and some lobbying involved. And once you get on their priority list, then they send that over to the Appropriations Committee, whether it's the House or the Senate. And then the Appropriations Committee has to take a look at it. And they make a decision whether or not this will be included in an appropriations bill. And so we're at the beginning stage where both of these members of Congress have made this request. They think it is very important. And we think in the next couple of months, maybe before that, we will find out if these projects are actually in an appropriations bill. And then that appropriations bill, in theory, is supposed to be approved at the end of the year, and that becomes law. So we not only have 3.5 million, which is supposed to help improve and upgrade 4 of the pump stations for the levee, as well as the electrical systems and some relief wells. Also some upgrades to the cross pipes. So that's the purpose of the 3.5 million. And then we were able to get another earmark request in, both supported again by Congressman Muser and Senator Fetterman, for 2.6 million. And that is for the Old City Revitalization Project. And this was kind of a partnership between the city and Lycoming College. This would help with city street modernization in Old City, some of the Willow Street pedestrian improvements, 4th Street utility improvements, Basin Street Riverwalk connector, and other improvements will be included in some of that. So this just kind of jumpstarts that project. And we should know in the next couple of months whether or not that 2.6 million makes it through into the Appropriations Committee. The other thing I wanted to report on is just last week, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had a cadre in Williamsport. And that cadre was to kick off the formal semi-quantitative risk assessment, the SQRA, which is supposed to assess the levee and figure out the different elements that need to get upgraded. And the reason for that is we need to have the levee certified and accredited. And so this is a very important first step to make that happen. Now, after the Army Corps was here last week in Williamsport, they determined something we already knew, which was that the Memorial Eye Wall and the Dewey Eye Wall needed to be improved. It needed to be, the height needed to be raised. And so there is a test, a hydraulic test, and some other tests that are being done. And we will know mid-next month how that comes out. And that will give us an indication of how tall those walls need to be raised to. The other thing I wanted to, and by the way, that SQRA came out of the entire community met at Penn College with FEMA, the Army Corps, the county was there, as well as the Water Authority, council, some council members were there, the mayor was there, of course, and FEMA was there. And it was a very, very important meeting to have. Congressman Keller led that. And that's what kind of kicked that whole process off. And this is where we find it today. The other thing I wanted to mention is just on March 28th, the mayor came to Washington. We had meetings with Senator Casey, Senator Fetterman's office at the time, also Congressman Muser and Congressman Thompson. And that sort of led into these very important congressionally directed spending requests that were made. It's very unusual to have two requests from one city made by two members of Congress. So I think we're in good shape there, but we'll see what happens in the next couple of months. Last year, when we were there in September and reported on the $8 million that was pending through Congressman Keller at the time for levee upgrades, we weren't quite sure what would happen with that funding. And thankfully, that funding actually made it fully through the appropriations process and was signed by the President of the United States at the end of the year. And so that became law. And we are now working with John Sander and the city to draw down that money to start putting that towards the other upgrades that we know need to be done with the levee. So we're talking about a renewal of a contract. I think that we have good momentum going into this summer and the fall and even next year on the things that we need to accomplish. And if I could just run through a couple of the items that we think is very, very important to continue the momentum that we have with the city. Really, there are two that are critical. One is you can't mail the earmark requests in. You have to work it. You have to work the process. It's extremely competitive. We had a member of Congress tell us the other day that just for one appropriations bill, they had 300 requests just for one appropriations bill. So certain members can only request 15 earmarks. So we were able to make 2 earmarks in Congressman Muser's list of 15, which is pretty remarkable. And then we're also with Senator Fetterman. So we need to work that through this process over the next couple of months. And if we make it in an appropriations bill, which I think we will, then we got to work that till the end of the year to try to get that in the final bill, because there's going to be a lot of horse trading that goes on because this is so competitive. And then the other thing is we need to continue work with the Army Corps to ensure that the SQRA process moves forward in some form. And we've been on weekly calls with them, as well as John Sander and others, to monitor that. There are just a few other things that we're working on as well, such as assisting the city with that 8 million drawdown. But also, I wanted to just ask my colleague, Andy Garfinkel, if he could run through a few of some targeted grants that we're looking at as we get into the fall, and how now is the perfect time to prepare for this additional, what we think is budget relief for the city. Andy?
Good evening, council members. Thank you for having us this evening. I'm really going to talk about two grant opportunities that are on the near-term horizon. One is called Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, the BRIC grant. That grant has typically come out in the August timeframe each year. It is specifically for addressing climate change related concerns. And in this case, we've been focused on Graphius Run. We are working with John Sander to identify potential projects. One in particular is called a movable trash rack system that John has expressed interest in, which takes some of the trash and prevents damming in the Graphius Run and prevents flooding. So that's one that we're looking at. That's about a $2.4 million project. And then a second grant is related to developing a crisis intervention team with the Williamsport Bureau of Police. The CITs are used around the country nationally. Right now, Williamsport does not have a CIT, crisis intervention team. We talked about this at the last council meeting. I think the challenge has been to identify a behavioral health partner that can be out in the field with WBP at the appropriate times. And that's really been the holdup for us trying to advance this grant. But we are working with WBP, and we're trying to identify some behavioral health partners. And so that is, we are likely to move forward with that. That will be out at the end of this year into early 2024. And so that's another one we're looking at. There are a couple of other grants related to transportation funding, highway funding, and then another related to brownfield cleanups that we've been talking to the city about as well. And those are a little bit longer term, but are high priorities for what we're looking to address. Thank you, Tom.
Absolutely. And then just to follow up on some of those grants, you know, we are professional grant writers as well as federal advocates. And so whatever the county, whatever the city needs, sometimes there's partnership opportunities with the county, but whatever the city needs, we want to be sure to make sure you know that we can write those grants and get those submitted. And we would go after, of course, since they're federal grants, we would go after letters of support from the congressional delegation, which also supports the potential award of those grant applications. And we do think it is important that we have another meeting with the mayor down in Washington sometime in the fall. What that will do is help bolster, if we are included in an appropriations bill, which I think we will be, that will give further push towards making sure that that ends up in law at the end of the year. That's the hope. And so thank you for the opportunity. We hope that the council will consider working with us for another term. And it's been a real honor and pleasure to work with each of you. So thank you.
Thank you, team at Keller. Before I open up the floor for questions, just a couple of quick questions. For the crisis intervention team grant, if there's any comparable cities to Williamsport that you can send us models of what this looks like, that kind of thing, whether it's similar in population size, demographics, crime rates, et cetera. I think that'd be helpful, at least for me, to help understand what this is going to look like. Not only short term over this grant, if we get it, but long term once this grant expires. So if there's any information you can send to us, I think that will be helpful. The other thing too, I think a couple members of council have expressed to me their interest in helping you and the mayor in your efforts as well. So when you get those meeting dates pinned down in the fall, let us know. We might be interested in tagging along.
Will do. Yeah, it's always important, I think, at times to have the council's perspective in these meetings. And so we'll keep you posted, definitely.
Certainly. Open the floor for questions or comments, items of discussion with both the resolution, but also Keller and team's report. Mrs. Katz.
Tom, I'm really happy that earmarks are being placed in place at this point, because we didn't even start momentum because we didn't have any earmarks for the levy, I would say about 10 years ago. And we wasted a lot of time at that point. And it was due to Senator Yaw that we realized that we didn't have that in place. So I'm happy to see that now we're moving forward with that, because it usually takes how long with earmarks? It can take sometimes a couple of years, right?
That's exactly right. It's Councilwoman Katz. You know, what happens is the members are just inundated with these different types of requests. And sometimes they're having to fill requests that they missed out on the previous year because they only can do so many. So it just so happens that I think the congressional delegation, because of our work as a team with the mayor and the council and others, we are in front of those members of Congress, and they see the need. They understand the seriousness of the repair for the levee. And, you know, this is a great source of funding. And this is exactly what earmarks were designed to do, because we cannot go to a grant and just get a $8 million grant that's going to repair all of the things that we have with the levee. And by the way, that 8 million is very unusual. You're only going to get anywhere from, 500,000 up to maybe 3 million. But we were able, again, by bringing Congressman Keller to the levee, and of course, he was very much aware of the need to repair the levee. He decided to take his entire allocation, earmark allocation, and dedicate it to Williamsport. He didn't earmark any other organization or municipality, which I think is remarkable. So, but that's the kind of work, the relationship building that is required to keep this type of momentum going.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions, whether it's for the renewal or for their report that they just provided us?
The question that I have, you piqued my interest with the two things really. You talked about the earmark for Old City, specifically with infrastructure rebuild there. Without a lot of construction plan there, I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish with redoing the infrastructure beforehand. We've got no building plans there. We've got no properties that are being sold at the moment, a little bit farther east. But the other, a bit more interesting thing is the brownfield cleanup grant that you're going after. Does the administration have, if you can share with us, any specific properties that you're looking at to have cleaned up?
Tom, I'll take both questions if that's okay.
Of course.
So in response to your first question about Old City, you have to think about the timing for when these earmarks come out. So this is a fairly lengthy process. So we're looking at most likely the fall for and we may know sooner than that whether the earmark is in the bill, but we're looking at the fall for, this funding being approved, and then really the winter of 2023 into 2024, when the grant is actually, becomes actionable. And then we're looking at, several months after that before we can start drawing down those funds. But this is really a partnership with the college. And so from that perspective, there are some activities that are underway and that are planned, and that we do think that.
I'm going to interrupt you really quick because that's a very important fact that I think we need to know. Did you seek out this earmark under the directive of the administration or of the college, or was it a joint ask?
It was primarily under the city, but it was a joint ask because it was in partnership with the college.
Thank you. Now the brownfield question, if you can
On the
clarify.
brownfield question, we do not have a site identified right now, but it is a program that has been out for about the last 15 years, and is a very well-known program, that if there is an identified site, which we've been talking to the city about, then we definitely want to pursue that, but we don't have a specific site in mind right now.
Thank you.
And Councilman, if I could just add to that, part of what we do is we analyze the needs of the city, and that's primarily working with the administration. And so they provide us with the needs. And then what we do is we develop those needs into what could be actionable grant opportunities. In addition to that, so then we're looking at the funding streams for that. And then there's another way to look at it too, and that is, hey, there is, significant funds coming out through EPA, through their brownfield grant opportunity, up to $1 million. And so if there is a need there, we could tap into that funding. It doesn't mean there is a need, but it's an opportunity that we don't want to not talk about because it's budget relief if there is a need. I hope that answers that question.
It absolutely does. The brownfield one is what's more exciting to me, because I could think of about 30 acres within the center city that are brownfield and to be cleaned up that are currently industrial. That would give us a great opportunity for development. Obviously, that's a conversation for another day, but I was just curious if there was anything specific in mind, whether it was on Reach Road or whether it was another property that we've been approached about.
Again, we are, I think the city is open to looking at different sites. We actually did a very similar project in that same scope and size in Chicago, that was successfully awarded twice with this particular program, and cleaning up different segments of that brownfield site. And there is a specific reuse objective for those, for that particular project. So it's likely that we could, we'll definitely want to take a closer look at what you have in mind.
Any other comments or questions?
Hey, if I can chime in just for a second, Adam. And
Ms.
this is more in response. Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about this. Yeah, crap connection here. But hey, Eric, I would guess that, well, or at least I'm hoping that part of the request for Lycoming College and the city in that zone. I know one of Lycoming College's priorities is establishing access to the Riverwalk down Basin Street. And there is not much funding currently in place for that. And so I would hope that possibly one of the rationales behind requesting that earmark would be to help with the Basin Street access. To Keller and Associates, I would say also. But I would hope that's one of the potential uses for that funding. Because I know it's important to Lycoming College in terms of bicycle access and recreational access for their students.
And Councilwoman, that absolutely is part of the equation that we're looking at in terms
Okay.
of Riverwalk. So thank you for bringing that
Great,
up.
awesome. Okay, but yeah, I clearly, I think that the partnership with Keller and Associates has been very fruitful for the city so far. And I look forward to continuing this for the next year and seeing how these other potential earmarks and other projects that we're working on together develop. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Any other comments or questions? Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Keller team, thank you very much for being here, for your update. Look forward to working with you for the next year that we have in front of us here. Like I have said before, never hesitate to reach out if you need perspective from council. We are here to give it. And I think may even be interested in being more involved as we move forward with you. Guidance on projects, grants, etc. So, all right.
We appreciate the council's guidance. Thanks. Thank you all.
Thank you as well.
Okay. Hearing and seeing no other comments or questions, Mrs. Frank, on the motion for item 7, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. We will move to item 8, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing third renewal of a consultant agreement between city and Delta Development Group.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All right. This is the second of our consultant contracts. Mayor's not here to introduce this, so I will take a quick stab at it. So Delta, just like Keller Partners, is one of our lobbying firms that works on our behalf. They focus more on state of Pennsylvania versus federal. I think we've had a much longer history with them. I know that there was a good discussion in our Public Works Finance meeting on Tuesday. They had sent out an update, some additional information that I think was a combination of what was discussed in the meeting as well as requested. But I will actually turn this over to Councilwoman Katz on the discussion on Tuesday. Teresa is here from Delta. I don't know if there's an additional update she has. If there is, she can certainly give it, but I know this was one that was actually discussed previously to the meeting. So I'll start with you, Mrs. Katz.
Yes, Teresa, really gave us a long list of projects that they've been working on. I'm not going to go through the list because it is a long list. We have had a long relationship with you, Teresa. It's been a couple of decades, I think, at least. And you've been very good with what you've done for us. Moving forward, there are a lot of things in the pipeline here as far as what we want to see get done. Let's see. You're still working on Bowman Field, trying to get the failed appraisal. You're trying to also, I'm trying to read my handwriting here. You're also doing Park Avenue to connect to downtown, which that's a big project that we would really like to see moving. And I think you have a lot of information on that. We did do a study on Park Avenue, and to move forward with that, I think would be a great addition to the city, Teresa. Other than that, looking at some of the things that you have there, the Little League Boulevard traffic signals, the neighborhood enhancement, DCED 6-year period, which is for, again, with the Park Avenue project. Am I missing anything here? Trying to read my handwriting, Teresa.
But I think the, when we were there in September, we had talked about the PCCD grant, and that was awarded in, losing my lights here. That was awarded in December. I finally got under grant agreement. With PCCD, that's the local law enforcement. Those were larger grant amounts, usually PCCDs in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. That was 1.5 million. It provided the list of what that will fund or is funding. A large portion of it is equipment upgrades. So the upgrade to the records management system, the license plate recognition system, interview room cameras, a drone crime scene system, patrol bikes, and mobile patrol cameras as well. And then there was money allocated for recruitment. And that was one thing that PCCD was looking as far as these funds were federal funds and being administered by PCCD. So there was a big push to get recruitment and making sure that departments were filling unfilled positions within the department. And as Bonnie stated, we have 3 pending applications, 1 for traffic signals, and then 2 that are public safety with the fire department. And those are FEMA grants. The Assistance of Firefighter grant is being rolled out slowly. They haven't awarded all those funds yet, so we're still tracking that. And then the SAFER grant will probably be awarded sometime next spring.
Teresa, the one question that, I didn't bring up at the meeting was, we have allocated ARPA funds to the police department for certain things. Until we have a list of what's going on, what we have allocated to them, and what is being spent out of ARPA, we've got to have a clear picture here, because we stated a long time ago, if there's grant money out there for some of their purchases, we'd rather use that instead of the ARPA money.
Yes.
So we have to make sure that we have a list of where we're going for with the police
Okay.
department.
And did you want me to work with the police department to reconcile that list of what
Yes,
they had? Okay.
I think that would be great, because I don't want to see things, because as you heard earlier, we can use some of the extra money for some of the improvements with the
Sure.
Brandon Park.
Sure.
Thank you, Mrs. Katz. That was a good summary of the discussion on Tuesday. Teresa, is there anything additional that you would like to or need to share following up on the conversation on Tuesday before we finalize any discussion on this item?
Now, there are other, and I don't have them as far as future, but there are other state programs that are open. One is the TA set aside, that's for transportation improvements. And then the other is the multimodal, and you've had multimodal awards. I'll work with the administration to identify projects for both of those grant funds. And the CFA is due at the end of July. And then the TASA is due, I think, in September.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Allison, you have a question?
Yeah, I have one question, Teresa. The Destination 2014 closeout, is that just a bookkeeping thing?
Yeah, we're looking for, we have the certificates of final completion from contractors, but we're trying to locate the final pay apps.
So it's really not a significant thing. It's just
Bookkeeping.
so we
Yes.
can close it out with the state and everything then.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allison.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions? Teresa, just like with Keller Partners, we're grateful for the partnership. We're looking forward to working with you, I think, over the next year of this contract. And again, if they're just like with what we had said to Keller, if there's anything that you need from council, by all means, reach out. We're here to support your efforts on behalf of the city. And we may even be interested in getting a little bit more involved than we have in the past and working with you. So looking forward to it.
Very good.
All right, no other comments or questions. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 8, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy. Mrs. Katz.
Yes, Janice, sorry.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. We'll jump up to item 6, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing execution of an agreement between the city of Williamsport and Ziggy's and Aaron's Water Ice.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. This is our last item tonight. So this is getting an agreement together with Ziggy's Water Ice. They're planning to support some of our concession efforts, I believe, over at the pool. This was discussed on Tuesday in Public Works Finance as well. I will turn it over to you, Mrs. Katz, to brief us on the discussion.
Aaron's Ice has been in business for quite some time and he's very good with the public. He's been very good to the city as far as what he does. Right now, I would really, since we don't have the mayor here or Aaron's Ice, I would really like to table this till next council meeting because there is a question as far as all the licensing and everything, because they want to start next week.
Okay. Well,
And I have I think
what's the
there's
question?
questions,
What's the question?
about a health certificate.
Okay, well, the contract covers, they have to have a health certificate for them to operate under this contract.
And there isn't one.
So if there isn't one, well, then, I mean, that's a codes thing.
Right.
Our codes department needs to circle back with them and do that and get that.
Because I take it this was checked out today. Mrs. Frank, Norm?
Norm didn't review this. I believe it was the McCormick.
I don't know whether or not they've been out there. But before they start opening up to the public, they have to have a health permit. Otherwise, they're in violation of both city and state law,
They do regardless of this contract or not.
with or without the
Right.
contract.
Yeah.
And if they're in the business of selling food, they should be well aware of that.
Mhm.
Correct.
I want to, since there's nobody here to answer that question,
But it
we
doesn't
don't
ma-
know if it's fact or fiction, and I don't want to vote on something.
Well, if
that's-
you approve the agreement, you know, they can't sell without the permit. It's like any other business in town, like, for example, your business. If you didn't have the health permit, you couldn't sell food, agreement or no agreement, even with your landlord. It must be the same thing. They cannot start to operate until codes goes out, inspects them and gives them a permit. It's like any other business that's, if we enter an agreement with anyone else for them to start up. It's implicit in there that they have to comply with our city ordinances. So whether you approve, that's why I would say it's fine to approve the agreement, because if codes can get out there in the next day or so, then they can open up.
Okay, is that all that's needed then?
Yeah.
Then there shouldn't be a problem because they probably can do that in a couple of days.
If they're in the business of selling food, they should know that anyway.
Okay,
And if they've made arrangements with codes, that's great.
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
I guess it'll be fine then.
Okay.
I mean, it's
Yep.
it's a needed thing at the pool. It really is. And the pricing that was sent down to us, as far as what he charges, right in line for what anybody can afford. It's like I said, it's a good match. It really is. And Aaron has done business in the city for a long time. And you're right, he should know this.
Yeah.
But people question and we have to make sure that we're doing it legally.
I wouldn't be surprised if they've already applied. So.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Anything else from the conversation Tuesday?
And no, just that, we just love the man. He does a lot for the city, and it is a good mix.
Any other comments or questions from other members? I have one, but I'll defer to others first.
Mhm.
I know there's been some recent conversation, I think amongst different council members and with the administration on, as we're working with more businesses for city functions, making sure that they're in compliance with our treasurer's office, our local tax laws, et cetera. And I believe that, Aaron's is compliant there as well. But I do think we should add something to the contract to make sure that that is the case. And I do think it's something that we need to make sure is in contracts moving forward for vendors that we're working with in this regard as well.
Right.
I don't know what other people's thoughts are on that, but I do think it's something worth adding.
Mhm.
Well, I think it also helps the Treasury Department also.
Yeah,
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
it's also something that, in speaking with the treasurer, that he would like to start seeing in the agreements as a
Mhm.
requirement that they be registered with both, the city treasurer's office and also the municipal school tax office. Since they each collect different taxes, but they are local taxes. And that's the type of language it really should be in.
Yeah, so I think for purposes of this, I mean, I can propose an amendment here. And make a motion to amend the contract to add to section 3, a section H. That Aaron's Water Ice becomes and maintains compliance with all local city tax laws and the treasurer's office. I think that would essentially cover that.
That and the municipal tax office.
And then add and the municipal tax office to that. So there's the motion to amend.
Second.
Motion and a second to amend. Any comments or questions on the motion to amend? All right, hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on the motion to amend, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes,
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to amend passes 5-0. I think that's about the only other kind of thing hanging out there that I had seen or caught. So and again, to Norm's point, to Kevin's point, our treasurer's office, I think this is a good thing to do moving forward. And something we should definitely keep an eye on and work to make sure is in future contracts. So good stuff. All right, back to the main motion. Any other comments or questions on this contract? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on the main motion for item 6, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
yes,
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Move to item 9, except for filing our Public Works meeting minutes from August 30th, September 14th, October 11th, and September 27th, 2022, and our controller report from March 31st, 2023. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Any comments or questions for the items we're accepting the file? Hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
yes,
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Item 10, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be on Thursday, June 22nd, 7 p.m. right here at Trade and Transit 2, 3rd floor. Upcoming meetings, Wednesday, June 14th at 3:30 is our O&E pension board. Thursday, June 15th at 10:30 a.m. is zoning hearing board. Tuesday, June 20th, 11:30 a.m. public safety, 1 p.m. finance, 2:30 p.m. public works, and 6:30 p.m. is historic architectural review board. Wednesday, June 21st, 9 a.m. is ERC, 10 a.m. blighted property. And Thursday, June 22nd is our next city council meeting. I'll open the floor to other members of council here in a second, but just want to wish all of our graduates from Williamsport Area School District a huge congratulations and all the success in whatever they decide to pursue after school. They've got a lot of options. The world's their oyster, I'm sure. This is a very exciting time. And they're embarking on a really exciting path regardless of what they choose. So congratulations, keep up the good work and continue to make us proud. So any other comments from members of council? Okay. Any comments from the 2 members of the administration that are here tonight? Any comments from the public at all? Okay. No members of the news media are here, so no comments from them either. Take a motion and a second for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening and a great weekend.